The first time Roman Bennett asked me not to leave him, Chicago was drowning in rain. Water raced down the windows of the penthouse library, turning the city beyond the glass into streaks of silver and bruised blue. My suitcase waited beside the elevator. Roman stood between me and the doors, his black dress shirt open at the throat, his usually perfect hair damp from the storm. He looked less like the untouchable head of the Bennett family, and more like a man who had run through half the building because he was afraid of being 1 minute too late. "Move," I said, although my hand had already tightened around the suitcase handle. Roman's gray eyes held mine. "You don't mean that. You cannot keep rejecting my resignation. I can reject poorly written documents." It was one sentence. No date, no transition plan, terrible margins. Even then, at the edge of disaster, he was impossible. I drew a slow breath. The room smelled of rain, old leather, and the cedar cologne that always lingered after he passed. "This is not a joke, Roman." His face changed when I used his first name. The hard line of his mouth softened, but he did not step aside. I had spent the better part of a year trying not to die inside a badly written Mafia romance. I had avoided the original hero, exposed a traitor with a museum inventory system, and accidentally taught Chicago's most feared crime boss how to make grilled cheese. Through all of it, Roman had listened to every sarcastic thought I never intended him to hear. Now he heard the one thought I could not make myself say aloud. "If I stay, I will love you enough to forget that this world was never mine." Roman went perfectly still. Thunder rolled over Lake Michigan. Somewhere below us, an elevator bell chimed. He crossed the space between us, slowly enough that I could have moved away. I did not. His hand rose, stopped beside my cheek, and curled into a fist before he let it fall. "Then forget," he said, his voice rough. "Forget the book. Forget the ending. Forget every version of me that existed before you opened your eyes here." My heartbeat stumbled. Roman took another breath. "But don't forget what happened between us." The lights went out, and from the other side of the elevator doors, a voice said, "Mr. Bennett, we have a problem." To explain how I ended up in the dark with a Mafia boss, holding my hand like it was the only real thing in the world, I need to go back to the beginning, to the evening I died of exhaustion, bad coffee, and professional irritation. If a rain-soaked standoff with a possessive Mafia husband is already doing something to you, you're in the right place. Follow along so you don't miss where this goes. It only gets messier from here. My name was Dominic Cole. I was 27, single, chronically underpaid, and employed as an archival technician at the Chicago History Museum. My work involved preserving letters, cataloging photographs, and explaining to interns that old was not a recognized filing category. I liked quiet rooms, strong tea, and objects that stayed where I put them. I disliked office politics, rushed lunches, and people who folded historic documents as if they were grocery receipts. My greatest ambition was to pay rent without checking my bank balance first. On the night everything changed, I was cataloging a donation from a retired theater director. At 11:43, I found a paperback hidden between two playbills. Its cover showed a glowering man in a black suit, standing behind a delicate blonde butler. The title was The Mafia King's Perfect Angel. I should have returned it to the box. Instead, I made coffee from the staff room machine and read all 312 pages. It was spectacularly terrible. Roman Bennett, the cold ruler of a Chicago crime dynasty, fell instantly in love with golden-hearted Noah Parker. Everyone else existed to admire Noah, betray Roman, or die at a dramatically convenient moment. Dominic Cole, the butler who happened to share my name, was loyal, competent, and rewarded for these qualities by being crushed beneath a collapsing display at a charity gala while protecting Roman. That is not character development, I told the empty archive. That is workplace exploitation. The heating system clicked. Rain tapped the basement windows. I turned the final page and found a handwritten sentence in the margin. "If you think you could do better, prove it." Absolutely not. My coffee tasted oddly sweet. The letters blurred. I rested my forehead against my folded arms, intending to close my eyes for 30 seconds. When I opened them, someone was fastening silver cufflinks around my wrists. I jerked back. An older woman in a navy suit regarded me with calm brown eyes. "Mr. Cole, if you move again, you'll make us late." Behind her, a mirror reflected a bedroom larger than my apartment. I was wearing a charcoal vest, a white shirt, and trousers tailored to a body that was mine, but somehow better rested. The face in the glass had my dark curls, my crooked left eyebrow, and none of the circles under my eyes. The woman was Evelyn Brooks, 58, the Bennett estate manager and former hotel director. In the novel, she appeared in 2 chapters, dispensed wise advice, and vanished without explanation. Memory arrived like boxes falling from a badly stacked shelf: the Gold Coast mansion, the Bennett family, tonight's charity gala at the Chicago Cultural Center, Dominic Cole, personal butler to Roman Bennett, the doomed display, the date of my death. I stared at Evelyn. What day is it? October 18th. Of course it was. I was scheduled to die before dessert. Chapter 2. A butler with a deadline. My survival plan had 3 steps. First, avoid Roman Bennett. Second, avoid anything suspended from a ceiling. Third, resign before anyone could assign me a poetic funeral. The plan failed before breakfast. Roman was waiting in the dining room beneath a chandelier the size of a compact car. He was 31, 6'3", and dressed in a dark suit that fit him with expensive precision. Black hair swept back from a face composed of sharp angles, gray eyes lifted from the financial section of the Wall Street Journal. In the novel, he was called the Wolf of Chicago. In person, he looked like winter had learned to wear cufflinks. He also smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. Excellent, I thought. My employer is handsome enough to make poor decisions look reasonable. Roman's newspaper stopped moving. I froze with the coffee pot in my hand. His gaze traveled across the empty room before settling on me. Did you say something? No, sir. Technically true. Morally flexible. A strong start. The corner of his mouth moved. I served his coffee. According to the book, Dominic knew every preference Roman had. 1 spoonful of brown sugar, a splash of cream. Cup handle angled right. It was an absurd amount of emotional labor for a man who communicated mostly through eyebrow movements. Roman took a sip. If he says acceptable, I'm pouring this into the nearest fern. It's good, he said. I nearly dropped the pot. Roman watched me over the rim of his cup. You look surprised. Your standards are high, and your coffee is good. Who are you? And what have you done with Chapter 1? This time I saw it clearly. His fingers tightened around the cup. His eyes sharpened, not with anger but with attention. Before I could examine that terrifying possibility, the door opened and Miles Carter entered. Miles was 34, Roman's chief operating officer and closest friend. He had sandy hair, the steady build of a former college linebacker, and the patient expression of a man who had spent years translating Roman's silences into complete sentences. The cultural center confirmed the installation schedule, Miles said. We leave at 6. Every muscle in my body locked. Roman noticed. Dominic, I need to inspect the display. Why? Because at 9:17, a decorative steel moon would tear loose from its cable. The original Dominic would push Roman aside and be killed. Explaining that seemed professionally awkward. Preventive conservation, I said. Museums taught me to distrust decorative objects installed by people who say, it should hold. Evelyn glanced at me. Museums? Apparently this Dominic had never worked in one. I watched documentaries. Roman lowered the paper. You're coming with me. To inspect the display? To the gala. Wonderful. The condemned employee has been invited to his own accident. Roman coughed into his fist. Miles looked between us. At the Chicago Cultural Center that evening, Tiffany glass glowed above the marble staircase. Rain polished Washington Street outside. Donors moved through the Grand Army of the Republic Rotunda, carrying champagne and private opinions about public art. The Bennett Foundation had sponsored an exhibition on Chicago architecture. Bank executives, city officials, and board members filled the room. Real power did not announce itself. It stood in small circles, spoke softly, and remembered who owed whom a favor. Roman's presence changed the temperature anyway. The Bennett family's reputation had been built during Prohibition, polished through real estate, freight, and hospitality, then wrapped in enough lawyers to become respectable. Roman was still called a mafia boss by enemies, gossip sites, and people who enjoyed remaining outside his hearing range. He never used the title himself. I stayed close, scanning cables overhead. Then I met the man who was supposed to replace me in Roman's life. Noah Parker was 26, a public relations consultant from New York with warm blonde hair and an open smile. In the novel, he was the beloved hero, kind, beautiful, and mysteriously incapable of recognizing danger until someone else had explained it twice. Roman Bennett, Noah said, extending his hand. I've heard a lot about you. Roman looked at him, then at me. Please fall in love on schedule. I have a resignation to submit. Roman's expression chilled. Have you? He asked Noah. Their conversation lasted 42 seconds. No instant fascination, no dramatic music, Roman dismissed him with a nod and turned toward me. You're staring at the ceiling. It has betrayed me before. In documentaries? So he had noticed. At 9:12, I found the steel moon hanging above the central installation. One support cable had begun to fray near the clamp. In the book, nobody saw it until it snapped. I called the venue manager, cleared the display area, and asked security to bring the installation supervisor. The supervisor insisted it was safe. I requested the engineering certificate. He produced a photocopy with a signature I recognized from the museum archives, belonging to an engineer who had retired 3 years earlier. At 9:17, while the room watched from behind velvet ropes, the cable failed. The moon dropped 6 feet and slammed into the empty platform with a metallic roar. Nobody was hurt. Silence spread beneath the glass dome. Then Roman's hand closed around the back of my neck and pulled me toward him. It was not a polished gesture. It was instinctive, almost desperate. My forehead struck his shoulder. His heart beat hard beneath my cheek, far faster than his calm face suggested. "You knew," he said quietly. "I suspected. You were standing under it 2 minutes ago, to read the clamp number." His arm tightened around me. The scent of cedar surrounded me, threaded with rain and the faint mineral smell of fear. "He's trembling." Roman inhaled sharply. I looked up. For one unguarded second, the Wolf of Chicago looked terrified. Not for himself. For me. The realization struck deeper than the crash. His thumb moved once against the nape of my neck, a small, unconscious stroke. Warmth spread beneath my collar. "Don't do that again," he said. "Prevent workplace accidents. Stand beneath something that can fall. That removes most of Chicago from my travel options." His mouth almost curved. "Dominic." My name sounded different in his voice, less like an instruction, more like something he had nearly lost. Across the room, phones were already recording. Noah Parker watched us with lifted eyebrows. Miles quietly redirected the press. I should have stepped away. Instead, I listened to Roman's heart settle beneath my ear and thought, this wasn't in the book. His hand went still. That night, Roman called me into his study. "Sit," he said. I remained standing. "I prefer having a clear path to the door." "Why?" "Natural athletic instinct. You avoid the gym. Natural lazy athletic instinct." He studied me across the walnut desk. Firelight warmed the hard planes of his face. "How did you know about the cable?" I gave him half the truth. "I know records. The certificate was wrong. You reacted before you saw it." I smiled. "Excellent intuition?" He leaned back. "You're planning to resign." Ice slipped down my spine. I had told no one. He can hear me. Roman's eyes flickered. There it was. I stood so quickly, the chair scraped the floor. He heard that too. For the first time since waking in the novel, dying did not seem like my most immediate problem. I tested him the next morning with a banana. Roman was signing documents in his office when I placed a silver fruit bowl on the corner of his desk. Sunlight crossed the lake and laid a pale road over the rug. "If you can hear me, pick up the banana," Roman continued reading. "The banana, your criminal majesty." He signed another page. I began to relax. Then he selected the banana, peeled it, and took a deliberate bite without looking at me. My soul briefly left my body. "Is something wrong?" he asked. "You don't like bananas. I'm reconsidering. Scratch your left eyebrow." He did. Tapped the desk twice. 2 quiet taps. I backed toward the door. "Dominic, think of static. Think of tax law. Think of the complete Amtrak timetable." "That won't help." I stopped. "How long?" Roman put down the banana. "Since yesterday morning." Every private insult replayed at once. Handsome refrigerator, emotionally unavailable skyscraper, organized crime Ken doll. I would like to resign. No, that was not a request. Then why did it sound like one? I pointed at him. "You have been reading my mind. Listening. I can't search it. That distinction will comfort the privacy attorney I plan to hire." To my astonishment, Roman looked ashamed. He rose but kept the desk between us. "I didn't choose it. I hear only you, and only when you're nearby or thinking intensely." I tried to stop. "Did you try leaving the state?" "No." "Then your methodology lacks commitment." His mouth twitched before seriousness returned. "I should have told you." "Yes, I'm telling you now. After using my thoughts to catch a structural failure and discover my resignation. After you saved a room full of people." The anger inside me stumbled over that. Roman came around the desk, slow and careful. "Set rules," he said. I folded my arms. "Rules? If I cannot stop hearing you tell me how to behave." No powerful man in the original novel had ever asked permission for anything. I studied his face, searching for manipulation and finding only controlled discomfort. Rule 1. You do not answer thoughts I haven't spoken. Agreed. Rule 2. You never use private information against me. Agreed. Rule 3. When I think curtain, the conversation ends. Why curtain? Because stop invading my brain, you elegant criminal, is too long. Roman looked toward the window, but not before I saw the smile. Agreed, he said. Rule 4. My resignation remains valid. Denied. We were doing so well. You have information about threats to this family. Leaving would put you at risk, and staying near the Mafia boss is the safe option, the safest available. I hated that the logic was annoyingly solid. The forged engineering certificate meant someone had engineered the accident. The novel blamed a rival family, but my memory of the book was already proving unreliable. Roman offered a compromise, 8 weeks under his protection while Miles investigated. After that, I could leave with a generous severance package and a new identity if necessary. I wanted in writing, I said, naturally, and weekends. You already have weekends. Then I want everyone informed, because apparently the mansion considers Saturday a philosophical concept. That afternoon, Roman signed the agreement. At the bottom, beneath his precise signature, he had added a handwritten line. I will never punish you for a thought. I looked at him. That was not part of the negotiation, I said. It should have been. Something warm and inconvenient moved beneath my ribs. Curtain, I thought quickly. Roman lowered his eyes at once. That was the first time he proved he could hear me, and still choose not to take. Living with a man who could hear my thoughts required discipline. Unfortunately, discipline had never survived long in my presence. Roman discovered that I mentally narrated breakfast when nervous. I discovered that he read corporate reports while secretly watching cooking videos. He learned I disliked lilies because funeral homes overused them. I learned he kept every birthday card Evelyn had given him since he was 16. The Bennett empire was less cinematic than the novel suggested. Its legal center was Bennett Urban Holdings, a private real estate and hospitality company owning hotels, warehouses, and apartment buildings across Illinois, Wisconsin, and New York. Its shadow came from Roman's late grandfather, who had used intimidation, political favors, and union influence to build the first fortune. Roman had spent 8 years separating the legitimate company from men who preferred the old methods. Most mornings, that separation looked like paperwork rather than danger. Audits, compliance filings, quiet buyouts of partners who still thought a handshake outweighed a contract. Roman rarely raised his voice during these calls. He simply removed people from spreadsheets the way other men removed weeds, methodically and without satisfaction. He was a mafia boss mostly because history was sticky. The current danger appeared in spreadsheets. Vanishing maintenance funds. Duplicate vendors. Inflated invoices connected to Victor Hale, 46, Roman's uncle by marriage, and the company's senior vice president of development. Victor had silver hair, a polished smile, and the moral atmosphere of a luxury car dealership after closing time. In the novel, he was a loyal advisor. That alone made me distrust him. My archival instincts found patterns Miles's financial team had missed. Vendor addresses matched demolished buildings. Signatures had been copied from old contracts. One supposedly new company used a logo retired in 2018. Roman moved a desk into his office for me. I'm a butler, I reminded him. You're an archivist pretending to be a butler. I dropped a folder. You knew? You think about humidity control with inappropriate passion. Paper has needs. So do you. The words landed softly between us. Roman looked down at the contract in his hands. I pretended to reorganize pens. Neither of us mentioned the sudden warmth in the room. Working beside him changed our rhythm. Mornings began with coffee and careful silence. By noon, he would loosen his tie. By 3, I would steal the almonds from his desk drawer. He started ordering 2 lunches after realizing I forgot to eat. I started leaving tea beside his elbow when headaches drew a line between his brows. One Thursday, snow came early. White flakes drifted past the office windows, while Roman argued with a Boston investor over the phone. His voice remained cool, but his free hand pressed against his temple. I warmed a cloth, stepped behind his chair, and laid it across the back of his neck. He stopped speaking for half a beat. My fingers brushed the short hair at his nape. Heat traveled into my palm. Roman leaned back almost imperceptibly, allowing the contact. This is a terrible idea, I thought. Mr. Whittaker, Roman said into the phone, his gaze on mine. I'll call you tomorrow. He ended the call. Headache? I asked. Not anymore. That was medically implausible. You're effective. I should have stepped away. Instead, my thumbs rested at the base of his neck, and his eyes closed. The city beyond the glass disappeared behind snow. For 30 quiet seconds, the feared Roman Bennett let himself be tired beneath my hands. Then Miles entered without knocking. He stopped. I removed my hands as if Roman had caught fire. Miles examined the ceiling. Should I return after the workplace wellness initiative? Speak, Roman said. His ears were pink. I treasured that discovery irresponsibly. Miles had traced the forged gala certificate to Lakefront Event Systems, a vendor partly owned by Victor's college roommate. Roman wanted to confront Victor immediately. I suggested patience. If he knows we suspect him, the records disappear, I said. Roman's jaw hardened. He endangered you. He endangered many people. I care about the many people. His eyes held mine. I am angry about you. There it was again. That disarming honesty. Roman never decorated a feeling. He placed it between us like a weapon surrendered handle first. Then help me embarrass him properly, I said. Your revenge plan involves filing cabinets. The most frightening cabinet is the one containing tax records. His laugh was quiet and surprised, as if it had escaped before he could lock it away. I wanted to hear it again. That was how danger entered, not with a gunshot or threat, but with the realization that making Roman smile had become the brightest part of my day. Noah Parker returned on a Tuesday, carrying 2 coffees and no romantic destiny. He requested a meeting with me, not Roman. We sat in a cafe on Michigan Avenue while shoppers moved through cold November sunlight outside. I owe you an apology, Noah said. Victor Hale hired my firm to create press around the gala. He told us the display failure was caused by Bennett cost-cutting. Noah was not foolish. He had noticed inconsistencies, refused to release the story, and been fired. In this version of reality, the supposed hero had excellent instincts and no interest in Roman. For the record, Noah added, "Your boss terrifies me. He's house-trained. He watched me speak to you for 6 minutes, like he was calculating the cost of buying the building." I glanced through the window. A black SUV waited at the curb. Roman sat in the rear seat, pretending not to look toward us. He is absolutely calculating it. My phone buzzed. Roman, I am not despite myself. Noah followed my gaze. Oh, that's serious. What is? You smiled at a text. I smile frequently. You looked like someone turned on a light behind your face. I decided Noah was intolerably observant. He gave me copies of Victor's media instructions and introduced a new complication. Claire Donovan, 39, a federal compliance attorney who had quietly approached him after the gala. Claire was sharp, practical, and known for dismantling financial schemes without raising her voice. She believed Victor was laundering stolen company funds through shell vendors, but she needed internal evidence obtained legally. Roman disliked involving federal authorities. His family name had taught him that institutions offered protection selectively. I understood. Museums had taught me a gentler version of the same lesson. Powerful people loved history most when they could edit the labels. Still, I persuaded him. If you handle this privately, everyone will assume the old Bennett methods, I said that night. If Claire handles it, Victor loses the ability to make himself a martyr. Roman stood at the library window. And what do I lose? Control. You say that as if it's small. No, I say it because sometimes trust is choosing the risk you cannot manage. His reflection looked at me in the dark glass. Is that what you're doing with me? He asked. My breath caught, maybe. He heard it. I knew by the softening of his shoulders, but he obeyed our rule and did not answer. The restraint touched me more deeply than any confession could have. We met Claire at the Palmer house the next morning. She listened, documented, and set boundaries. No illegal access, no threats, no destruction of evidence. Roman agreed to all 3 with the expression of a man accepting terrible table manners. Afterward, we walked through the hotel lobby. Holiday garlands curved along the balconies. Piano music floated beneath the painted ceiling. You did well, I told him. I attended a meeting, without purchasing the building or frightening a government attorney. Claire isn't easily frightened. Neither am I. Roman stopped beside a marble column. Guests flowed around us. You were frightened at the gala, he said. I was under a large metal moon. Not for yourself. I remembered the original ending. Dominic pushing Roman away. A page describing devotion without ever allowing him a life beyond it. I knew something might happen to you, I admitted. Roman stepped closer. Why did that matter? Because he was no longer a character. Because I knew how he took his coffee and how loneliness made him turn every room into an office. Because his rare laughter felt like finding sunlight in winter. I looked down. Curtain. He immediately stepped back. The distance hurt more than I expected. That night, I found a small package outside my room. Inside was an antique brass letter opener, shaped like a feather and a note in Roman's handwriting. For the archivist who saved my life with paperwork, I carried it to his study. "This is bribery," I said, "a gift. A suspiciously thoughtful gift. Return it if you dislike it." I held it against my chest. I didn't say that. Roman's gaze dropped to my hand and warmth climbed into my face. "Thank you," I said. He nodded. I turned to leave. "Dominic." I looked back. "You never have to use the curtain because you're afraid of what I want," he said. "Whatever I feel is mine to manage. Your choices remain yours." The room became very quiet. That was unfairly attractive. Roman looked down, but his smile followed me into the hallway. By December, Victor's scheme had grown roots through 3 states. Claire needed time. Roman needed patience. I needed a vacation somewhere. Nobody had ever heard the phrase fiduciary misconduct. Instead, I got snowed in at a Bennett hotel in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Roman had scheduled a weekend retreat for company directors. A lake-effect storm closed the roads after dinner, leaving 12 executives, 6 hotel employees, and 1 deeply irritated butler trapped beneath a white sky. The power flickered at 9. The backup generator kept the lobby warm, but a burst pipe closed half the guest rooms. Evelyn reorganized the accommodations with military efficiency. "Mr. Cole, you'll share the presidential suite with Mr. Bennett," she said. I stared at her. "There are sofas. All occupied. Storage rooms?" A pipe burst. "The lobby piano, do try to preserve some dignity." Roman stood behind her with his hands in his pockets. He looks far too calm, suspiciously calm. "Did he bribe the weather?" "No," he said. Evelyn looked at him. "No what?" "Nothing. Our suite had 1 bedroom, 1 fireplace, and a sofa designed by someone who hated the human spine. Roman offered me the bed. "You're 6'3", I said. "You'll fold like an expensive lawn chair. I've slept in worse places." The novel supplied images of Roman's childhood in fragments. A silent mansion, adults speaking in coded phrases, a father who treated affection as leverage. I closed the bedroom door on those memories. "We can share," I said. "The bed is enormous. The United Nations could establish a neutral zone between us." Roman's eyes warmed. "Terms? Stay on your side. No mind listening after midnight, no stealing blankets. You stole the blanket on the drive here. That was a scarf. It was my scarf." The storm pressed soft hands against the windows. We changed in separate rooms and lay beneath the same white comforter, a careful distance between us. Roman wore a dark t-shirt. I discovered that a suit had concealed an unreasonable number of shoulders. "Curtain," I thought immediately. He turned his face toward the window. "Understood." I laughed into my pillow. "You make this difficult," I said. Existing with accuracy. For a while we listened to the wind. Without the city, the quiet felt complete. Roman's breathing slowed beside me. "Were you happy before?" he asked. The question entered the darkness gently. I told him about the museum, about lunch on the loading dock in summer and the smell of dust after opening an old box, about my tiny apartment above a bakery and the downstairs mixer that woke me before sunrise. I did not tell him I had died. I said only that I had lost that life suddenly and could not return. "I'm sorry," he said. "I miss it. But I wasn't unhappy. And now?" The truth sat warm beneath my tongue. "Now is complicated." Roman rolled onto his side. Moonlight reflected from the snow and silvered his face. "I can make it simpler. That sounds like a threat from you. Stay after the agreement ends." My heart beat too loudly. "As your butler?" "As whatever you choose." His hand rested between us, palm up. He did not reach. He simply offered. I placed my fingertips against his. The contact was smaller than a kiss, but more intimate than the embrace at the gala, because this time neither of us was frightened. His fingers closed carefully around mine. I want to know what kissing him feels like. Roman's breath caught. I could have used the curtain. Instead, I looked directly into his eyes. "You're breaking a rule," I whispered. "I haven't answered. Your face did. My face is beyond my control. Your face controls boardrooms. Not this one." The distance between us narrowed until I felt the warmth of his breath. Roman stopped with his mouth an inch from mine. "Say it aloud," he said. I won't take a thought as permission. The care in those words undid me. "Kiss me." His mouth touched mine slowly. Cedar, mint, warmth. The first kiss was gentle enough to be a question. The second came after I answered by curling my hand into his shirt. His palm settled against my jaw. His thumb traced the edge of my cheek as if memorizing something fragile. When we separated, snow whispered against the glass. "That was inconveniently good," I said. Roman smiled against my forehead. "I can apologize. Don't insult me." We fell asleep holding hands across the former neutral zone. In the morning, I woke with my head on his chest and all the blankets wrapped around me. Roman opened one eye. Thief? Mafia boss? Is that your defense? It establishes comparative wrongdoing. His laugh vibrated beneath my ear, and for a few bright minutes, the world outside the room did not exist. Returning to Chicago turned our private kiss into a public problem. Roman did not hide affection well. He had spent years denying himself ordinary tenderness, so once allowed, it appeared everywhere. A hand at my lower back as we crossed a room. Coffee placed beside me before I asked. His coat settling around my shoulders when I stepped onto the terrace without one. The staff noticed. Evelyn noticed first, naturally. At breakfast, she placed 2 plates on the table and said, "The household policy regarding relationships between senior staff requires disclosure." I choked on toast. Roman calmly signed a document. Dominic no longer reports through household management. "Since when?" I asked. 9 minutes ago. Evelyn's brows rose. "Convenient, efficient," Roman corrected. She left us with the smallest possible smile. I put down my coffee. "You cannot reorganize a company every time you kiss someone. I've never kissed anyone in the company before." Jealousy pricked before common sense arrived. "Anyone outside it?" Roman looked up. "Is that an official archival inquiry?" "I'm establishing provenance." He reached across the table and brushed a crumb from my lower lip. "Very few." "None," I asked to stay. The answer pleased me with embarrassing force. Our relationship still had no name. I remained in the mansion while Claire's case developed, working as Roman's records consultant rather than his butler. The distinction mattered to him. He gave me a salary based on museum industry rates, plus what he called a risk adjustment, and I called gilt money. We argued it down to a reasonable number. In return, I built a digital archive mapping every Bennett property transaction since 1997. It was the most romantic database of my career. We discovered Victor's pattern. He targeted older buildings scheduled for renovation, invented emergency repairs, then directed payments into companies he controlled. The scheme stole from Bennett Urban Holdings, but it also raised rents and delayed safety upgrades for tenants. Roman's anger went cold. "We reimburse every property," he said. "Before this becomes public, that will cost millions. It should. That choice changed something in me." The book had described his wealth, danger, and beauty for pages. It had never shown him deciding who should bear the cost of his family's failures. I kissed him first that night. He was standing over the dining table, sleeves rolled to his forearms, reading the reimbursement plan. I caught his tie, pulled him down, and pressed my mouth to his. Roman went motionless in surprise. Then his hands settled at my waist. "What was that for?" he asked when I released him. "Good governance. I'll reform zoning policy tomorrow. Don't become greedy." He kissed the corner of my mouth. "Too late." Victor responded to the reimbursements by leaking photographs of us. A gossip site published images from Lake Geneva beneath the headline. "Bennett's Butler becomes his ladit obsession." The article called me an opportunist and implied I had manipulated Roman through private information. By lunch, strangers had found my new email address. Roman wanted the story removed. Claire warned that legal pressure would make it spread. Noah proposed a better strategy. "Own the truth that matters," he said. "Dominic is a records consultant who identified financial irregularities and prevented a public accident. Confirm the relationship." "Refuse the rest." "Relationship?" I repeated. Roman looked at me. "If you want." The room waited. This was the choice I had been avoiding. Private affection could be dismissed as temporary, a strange consequence of proximity and impossible magic. Public truth could not. I remembered his open hand in the snowy room. "Boyfriends," I said. "We're boyfriends." Roman's entire face softened. Noah grinned. Miles pretended to review a blank page. The statement went out that afternoon. Roman did not deny his past or polish me into something glamorous. He called me a gifted professional and the man I am proud to be with. I read the sentence 17 times. That evening, he found me in the kitchen making grilled cheese. "You're crying," he said. "Onions." "There are no onions. Emotional cheese." Roman stepped behind me and wrapped both arms around my waist. His chin rested on my shoulder. "Too much?" he asked. I leaned back against him. "Just enough." We ate sandwiches at the Marble Island while snow began beyond the windows. Roman burned his tongue and blamed the pan. I laughed until my ribs hurt. The world had called me his obsession. Inside the quiet kitchen, he made me feel like his choice. Christmas approached, and the Bennett mansion underwent a personality change. Before me, Roman's holiday tradition consisted of sending expensive gifts and working through December 25th. Evelyn decorated the public rooms because tradition required it, but the enormous tree looked like an attractive stranger waiting in a hotel lobby. I declared this unacceptable. We bought mismatched ornaments from the Christkindl market in Daly Plaza. Roman wore a wool coat and a baseball cap, an ineffective disguise because powerful men apparently believed hats erased bone structure. He followed me between wooden stalls carrying cider while I chose a glass train, a painted museum, and a tiny silver wolf. "Subtle," he said, examining the wolf. "It looks friendlier than you. It has no expression." "Exactly." At a stall selling carved ornaments, a little boy reached for the same star I did. I released it at once. Roman bought the star, handed it to the child, and walked away before the mother could recognize him. The gesture was so quiet that it might have vanished if I had not seen it. I caught his gloved hand. "What?" he asked. "Nothing. Everything." His fingers tightened around mine. We invited staff and their families to decorate the tree. Miles brought his sister and 2 teenage nephews. Claire appeared with a bottle of wine and claimed she was conducting informal surveillance. Noah arrived from New York after accepting a communications position with the Bennett Foundation. Evelyn wore red, which shocked everyone more than any criminal revelation. Roman stood at the edge of the room at first. Noise made him watchful. Affection made him uncertain. I dragged him beneath the tree and handed him the silver wolf. "Where?" he asked. "Somewhere visible." He hung it beside the tiny museum. Our shoulders touched. Golden lights reflected in his eyes. "Better?" I asked. "Yes." He was not looking at the tree. Later, after everyone left, we sat on the floor among empty ornament boxes. My back rested against Roman's chest. His arms circled me beneath a shared blanket. "My mother liked Christmas," he said. It was the first time he had spoken about her. Catherine Bennett had died when he was 15. She had been a music teacher from Evanston, entirely unsuited to the Bennett world, and by Roman's account, the only person who laughed at his father without fear. After she died, my father removed the piano because he disliked seeing it unused. The mansion had a music room now, but its piano was new and untouched. "You could play it," I said. "I haven't played in 16 years. Muscle memory is annoyingly loyal." He resisted for 3 days. On Christmas Eve, I woke after midnight and heard music drifting beneath my door. I followed it down the corridor. Roman sat alone at the piano, sleeves rolled up, playing a hesitant arrangement of "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." He missed a note, paused, and began again. I sat beside him on the bench without speaking. His left hand continued. I added a terrible single-finger melody with my right. "You're ruining it," he murmured. "I'm making it accessible. You're playing 3 notes." With emotional conviction. He laughed, and the music broke apart. Then he kissed me beneath the warm pool of the piano lamp. His fingers smelled faintly of cedar polish. Outside, Michigan Avenue shone beneath fresh snow. "Stay," he whispered against my mouth. The 8-week agreement had quietly expired more than a week earlier. Neither of us had mentioned it. "Ask me tomorrow," I said. Pain flashed across his face before I touched his cheek. "Not because I want to leave. Because I want to answer when there is no holiday, no fear, and no case holding me here." He searched my face. "All right." In the morning, we stood in the kitchen while coffee brewed and pale sunlight crossed the floor. Roman wore flannel pants and an old Northwestern sweatshirt. The Wolf of Chicago had sleep-mussed hair. "Dominic," he said solemnly, "will you stay?" I pretended to consider. "The employment conditions have improved. You are not an employee. The coffee remains questionable." "You make the coffee." I smiled. "Yes, I'll stay." His relief was visible, immediate, and beautiful. He pulled me close enough that my feet left the floor. "This is undignified," I told his shoulder. "You're smiling, against my will." He carried me to the table anyway. For the first time since I had entered the story, staying was not something that happened to me. It was something I chose. Victor Hale planned his victory for the Bennett annual meeting in New York, held in the first week of the new year. He had spent months convincing minority investors that Roman was distracted, unstable, and compromised by a lover with access to confidential records. His proposal would remove Roman as chief executive and appoint Victor interim chairman. The meeting took place in a glass conference room above Park Avenue. Rain streaked the windows. Board members arrived, carrying leather folders and expressions cultivated for hostile takeovers. Victor greeted me with a sympathetic smile. "Dominic, I hope you understand this isn't personal." "That's disappointing." I prepared personally. He did not understand the warning. Claire sat beside the company's outside counsel. Noah managed the press downstairs. Miles controlled the presentation. Roman took his seat at the head of the table, calm as deep water. Victor spoke for 20 minutes. He displayed gossip headlines, declining projections, and photographs of Roman touching my back. He described me as an unknown servant who had gained inappropriate influence. Roman's hand rested beneath the table, close to mine but not touching. He was giving me the choice. I moved my little finger against his. Victor concluded with theatrical regret. This company cannot be governed by pillow talk. Several directors looked embarrassed for him. Roman said, "Dominic?" I stood. My presentation began with a photograph of a brick apartment building in Milwaukee. The property had been charged $480,000 for emergency masonry work. Street view images, municipal permits, and tenant records showed the work had never occurred. Then came a warehouse outside Rockford, a hotel renovation in Buffalo, a parking structure in Queens, 47 projects, 6 shell vendors, 1 shared mailing service, 2 recycled signatures. Every route ended at Victor. He interrupted twice. The first time, Claire asked him to let me finish. The second time, the board chair did. For the final slide, I displayed the forged engineering certificate from the gala, beside a genuine certificate from the same retired engineer. The copied signature included a small ink blot created when the original document had been scanned for a 2019 museum exhibition. Mr. Hale's contractor did not merely forge a signature, I said. They copied it from a public archive. Unfortunately for them, archivists are professionally offended by lazy reproductions. Silence held for 1 second. Then Claire smiled. Victor's composure cracked. This is absurd. He manufactured all of it. Under federal observation? Claire asked. That would be ambitious. She explained that subpoenas had confirmed the accounts. No dramatic arrests followed. 2 investigators waiting outside invited Victor and his attorney to a private conversation. He left through the conference room doors while reporters downstairs received the verified filing. His attempt to humiliate me had created the audience for his own exposure. Funny revenge, I learned, was mostly timing and excellent footnotes. The board rejected Victor's motion 11-1. The single vote in favor was Victor's own proxy, submitted before the meeting. Miles framed a copy for my office. When the room emptied, Roman remained beside the windows. You won, I said. We repaired part of what he damaged. That is a very mature answer. I preferred you when your emotional range was threatening furniture. He looked at me. He spoke about you as if you belonged to me. I noticed. You don't. I crossed the room. No. Something guarded returned to his face. I took his hand and placed it against my chest. I don't belong to you. I belong with you. Different preposition. Important legal distinction. His palm felt my heart beating. You make jokes when you're afraid, he said. I make jokes when awake. What are you afraid of? The answer came without defense. That once the danger ends, you won't need me. Roman's eyes closed briefly. Then he bent until his forehead rested against mine. I needed your information, he said. I love your terrible coffee, your stolen almonds, the way you sing the wrong words to every song. I love that you argue with elevators. I love you when you are useful, and I love you when you are asleep on my arm doing absolutely nothing. The city blurred behind sudden tears. He heard the thought before I said it, but he waited. I love you too, I whispered. His kiss tasted like coffee and relief. It was slow, warm, and entirely unconcerned with the boardroom's glass walls until Miles knocked from the corridor and pointed upward. A security camera faced us. I buried my face against Roman's chest. Buy the footage, I muttered. The building? Do not become ridiculous at a vulnerable moment. He laughed into my hair. With Victor gone, the original plot should have collapsed. Instead, it made one final attempt to correct itself. The note appeared in my room on the anniversary of my arrival. It lay beside the brass letter opener, written in the same ink as the challenge I had found in the museum archive. The story ends where it began. Leave before midnight, and your old life will be restored. For several minutes, I could hear only the ticking clock. My old life, my museum desk, my apartment above the bakery. A world where I knew the rules and no one heard thoughts I was too afraid to speak. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Roman was in Boston inspecting a hotel renovation. He would return the following afternoon. I could leave without watching his face change. The thought was cowardly, efficient, and tempting. At 10, I walked through the mansion. Evelyn was reviewing menus in the kitchen. Miles had left a baseball ticket on Roman's desk for the spring. In the music room, our disastrous duet waited on the piano stand. 2 mugs sat beside the library fireplace. One with a crack Roman refused to replace because I always chose it. This world had gathered around me, one ordinary object at a time. At 11:15, a storm rolled over Chicago. Rain struck the windows exactly as it had on the night from my opening memory. I packed a suitcase and carried it to the elevator. Not because I had decided to go, because I needed to know that I could. The elevator opened before I pressed the button. Roman stood inside, rain darkening his coat. He saw the suitcase. All color left his face. "Your flight was tomorrow," I said. "I heard you." Boston was nearly 1,000 miles away. From there, not words, fear. He stepped into the library. Then one thought. "You said goodbye." I had not realized I had. We reached the moment where this story began. Roman between me and the doors, rain behind the glass. My heart divided between 2 lives. I thought the truth. He asked me to forget the book but remember us. Then the lights went out. "Mr. Bennett," Miles said from the elevator, his phone flashlight cutting through the dark. "We have a problem." The storm knocked out the west transformer. Roman stared at him. Miles looked at my suitcase, then slowly backed into the elevator. "A problem that can wait." The doors closed. Despite everything, I laughed. Roman did not. "Are you leaving?" I showed him the note. He read it once. His hand shook at the edge of the paper. "What do you want?" he asked. No command, no rejected resignation, no promise to purchase whichever city I chose. He stood in the dark and gave me the freedom he feared most. "I wanted to see the museum again," I said. "I wanted to know whether my plants survived. I wanted one more morning when the bakery mixer woke me at 5. He nodded, each movement careful. "Then you should go." My chest ached. "You would let me? I would drive you myself if that were possible." That was when I understood the difference between obsession and love. Obsession said, "You are the answer to my hunger." Love said, "Even hungry, I will not consume you." I opened the suitcase. Roman looked away. Inside were the things from my old life I had gathered since arriving. Museum catalogs, coffee from my favorite neighborhood, a photo of the bakery, and the clothes I planned to donate the next morning. I packed because I was closing the door properly, as I said. Archivists believe in labeled endings. He looked back. I tore the note in half. Nothing happened. No thunder beyond the actual storm. No glowing doorway. Just paper falling between us. "I had a life there," I said. "A good one. But it ended. This one didn't replace it. It grew after it." Roman crossed the room and stopped before me. "I choose this life," I said. "I choose Evelyn correcting my ties. I choose Miles pretending not to gossip. I choose your terrible grilled cheese. You taught me. You ignored me. And me?" His voice was barely audible. I placed both hands around his face. Rainwater cooled my palms. "I choose you, Roman." His eyes closed. A breath left him like he had been holding it for a year. When he embraced me, there was no force in it, only relief. I held him just as tightly. "You crossed 3 states because you panic," I murmured. "I took a plane. Less romantic. I told the pilot to hurry. There he is, my reasonable criminal." The lights returned while we were kissing. Miles, unfortunately, returned at the same moment. "Transformer fixed," he said, then covered his eyes. Emotional crisis also fixed, apparently. Roman did not release me. I looked over his shoulder. "Put knock before entering in the emergency procedures." Already drafting it. Before Roman proposed, we practiced being ordinary. This was harder than exposing Victor. Roman understood hostile negotiations, multi-million-dollar projects, and the precise silence required to make a roomful of executives reconsider their lives. He did not understand grocery shopping. The first time we visited a Whole Foods together, he stood before 20 varieties of olive oil, as if facing a coordinated attack. "Why are there so many?" he asked. "Freedom." "This is not freedom. This is administrative failure." He chose the most expensive bottle. I replaced it with the one on sale. We debated tomatoes, bought too much bread, and reached the checkout without acquiring a single company. I considered the trip successful. At home, we established Friday dinners. No staff, no business calls, and no meals plated with architectural ambition. I cooked because my previous life had trained me to survive on inexpensive ingredients. Roman chopped vegetables with the concentration of a surgeon and the speed of cautious erosion. One evening, I showed him how to make my mother's chicken pot pie. She had died when I was in college, but the recipe remained in my memory. Thyme crushed between warm fingers, butter cut into flour, steam carrying the sweet smell of carrots through the kitchen. Roman rolled the pastry while I prepared the filling. Your mother taught you, he asked, mostly by criticizing my technique. I would have liked her. I smiled. She would have interrogated you. I've survived federal attorneys. Claire uses evidence. My mother used prolonged eye contact. When the pie emerged, the crust leaned to one side, but the kitchen smelled like the small house in Oak Park where I had grown up. I arrived quietly. My hand stopped above the stove. Roman noticed. He always noticed. He did not ask me to explain or tell me the feeling would pass. He turned off the burner, placed the spoon aside, and held me. My forehead rested beneath his jaw. The oven clicked as it cooled. I wish she could know you, I said, into his shirt. Tell me about her. So I did. We ate crooked pie at midnight while I described her terrible singing, her color-coded calendar, and her belief that every emotional crisis could be improved by feeding someone. Roman listened as if preserving each detail was work entrusted only to him. In return, he took me to Evanston and showed me the narrow brick house where his mother had lived before marrying his father. Another family owned it now. We stood across the street beneath budding maple trees. She planted those tulips, he said, though decades had passed, and they could not possibly be the same flowers. I did not correct him. Roman had spent years treating memory like a locked room. That afternoon, he opened it window by window. He told me how Catherine danced while cooking, how she hid mystery novels behind music books, and how she squeezed his shoulder 3 times to mean I love you when words were impossible in public. I took his hand and squeezed 3 times. His eyes closed. Then he returned the signal. Our life filled with small rituals after that. Sunday walks by the lake. Wednesday, takeout from a family restaurant in Uptown. Notes tucked into briefcases. Arguments about thermostat settings. Roman began sleeping through the night more often. I stopped keeping my suitcase beneath the bed. Those ordinary weeks taught us how to disagree. When Roman became quiet, I stopped assuming silence meant rejection. When I joked too sharply, he asked what fear was hiding beneath it. We were not graceful. Once, we argued for an hour about a canceled dinner and discovered neither of us cared about dinner at all. He feared disappointing me. I feared becoming easy to postpone. We apologized in the hallway, forehead to forehead, while the pasta softened in the kitchen. Love, I learned, was not perfect understanding. It was returning to the same conversation with gentler hands. We also learned smaller things, the kind no novel bothers to record, that Roman hummed off-key when he thought no one could hear him doing dishes, that I talked in my sleep about filing systems, and once memorably about a rogue umbrella stand, that neither of us was good at receiving compliments, so we practiced on each other over breakfast, until it stopped feeling like an ambush. One morning, I found him in the dressing room holding my empty suitcase. What are you doing? Making space. He placed it on the highest closet shelf, not hidden, not discarded, available if I ever chose it. The gesture tightened my throat. That is inconveniently symbolic, I said. I learned from you. He kissed my forehead, then left for work as if he had not rearranged something fundamental inside me. I stood beneath the suitcase and understood that home was not the place where leaving became impossible. It was the place where the door remained unlocked, and love still gave you reasons to return. 3 weeks later, Roman invited me to the museum. Roman proposed several months later in the museum archive, where my old life had ended. Bennett Urban Holdings funded a preservation fellowship with no naming rights and no demand for favorable publicity. The museum invited us to view the restored theater collection. I had wondered whether the hidden paperback would be there. It was not. The basement smelled exactly as I remembered: cardboard, cool air, and the faint vanilla scent of aging paper. My former desk belonged to a young technician named Caleb, who had organized his pencils by hardness. I approved. Roman followed me between shelves, wearing a navy suit and an expression of intense concentration. "You're nervous," I said. "No, your left cuff is fastened through the wrong buttonhole." He looked down and muttered something impolite. At the end of the aisle, a small archival box waited on a table. Its label read, "Cole, Dominic, personal accession. You made me an accession?" Evelyn helped. Inside were objects from our first year: the fake engineering certificate, our Lake Geneva room key, the silver wolf ornament, the board vote framed by Miles, and the torn note sealed in a protective sleeve. At the bottom lay a new document: Proposal for a Shard Life. It contained 12 clauses. Clause 1 promised separate closet space. Clause 2 prohibited the unilateral purchase of restaurants. Clause 3 established that blanket theft would be resolved through mediation. Clause 7 guaranteed my right to private thoughts. Clause 11 promised that neither man would confuse protection with control. Clause 12 read, "The undersigned, Roman Bennett, loves Dominic Cole without term, condition, or right of cancellation." When I looked up, Roman held a simple platinum ring. "I know a contract is not romantic," he said. "This is the most romantic document I've ever seen. That concerns me. Occupational damage." He took my hand. "Dominic, you entered my house expecting to die for me. Then you taught me that devotion is not sacrifice. It is attention. It is making coffee, telling the truth, and staying only when you are free to leave." My eyes burned. "I cannot promise a simple life," he continued, "but I promise it will be yours as much as mine. Will you marry me? Say something elegant." I ordered myself, "Yes, obviously." Roman laughed, and I kissed him before he could complain about my phrasing. We married in June at the Chicago Botanic Garden. The ceremony took place beside the English walled garden under a clear blue sky. There were no steel decorations suspended overhead. I had checked. Evelyn walked me down the aisle because she claimed someone had to ensure my tie remained straight. Miles stood beside Roman. Noah handled the press and then cried discreetly behind a program. Claire attended as a guest and confiscated Victor's proxy vote from Miles when he tried to use it as a coaster. Roman wore black. I wore deep blue. When I reached him, his composure cracked into the smile he once saved from the world. Our vows were simple. "I choose you when the room is quiet," Roman said, "and when every voice is against us." I slipped the ring onto his finger. "I choose you when you are terrifying, when you are tender, and even when you put cast iron in the dishwasher." The guests laughed. Roman leaned closer. "That happened once. Marriage requires an accurate record. When he kissed me, summer smelled of roses and sun-warmed stone. His hand rested against my cheek, mine pressed over his heart, steady beneath the fabric. The original Dominic had been written as a loyal shadow. I stood in sunlight instead, loved openly by a man who had learned that keeping someone began with opening his hand. Marriage did not make Roman less possessive. It made him more creative. When I traveled to Boston for a museum conference, he booked the room across the hall because the hotel's security plan lacked detail. When I mentioned liking a brownstone in Brooklyn, he asked whether I meant aesthetically or as an acquisition target. When a charming curator flirted with me at dinner, Roman sent a text containing only a photograph of our marriage certificate. I showed it to the curator. "Your husband is funny," he said. "Please never tell him. We maintain standards." Roman also learned compromise. He stopped assigning drivers without asking. He attended therapy to separate vigilance from care. He let Miles manage the company for entire weekends. Each act looked small from outside. I knew the courage required. I became director of the Bennett Center for Urban Memory, an independent nonprofit preserving the stories of neighborhoods affected by redevelopment. We partnered with local libraries, museums, and tenant groups. Roman signed the funding agreement and surrendered editorial control without argument. "You're growing," I told him. "I dislike your tone. That is also growth." The mind reading never disappeared, but it changed. Roman heard me less often, usually when emotion sharpened a thought into something almost spoken. We treated it like a door the wind sometimes pushed open. He always knocked anyway. One autumn evening, we returned to the Cultural Center for the Foundation Gala. A new installation stood beneath the Tiffany Dome, hundreds of paper birds suspended on individual silk threads. I stopped in the doorway. Roman followed my gaze upward. "They have engineering certificates. Authentic?" Claire verified them. "Weight tests?" Miles witnessed them. "Emergency plan?" Evelyn wrote it. I relaxed. "You know me too well. I had an unfair advantage." Across the room, Noah waved beside his boyfriend, Daniel Ruiz, a 30-year-old pediatric physical therapist from Queens, whom he had met during a Bennett Foundation event. Their romance had developed without kidnappings, destiny, or structural failure. Noah claimed this was healthier. Roman and I moved through the crowd. People still watched him, but the fear had altered into respect in many faces. Bennett Urban Holdings had reimbursed tenants, sold the shell-linked properties, and created an outside ethics board chaired by someone Roman openly disliked. I considered that proof of sincerity. At 9:17, the paper birds began to move. Air currents lifted their wings in waves. White shadows crossed Roman's face. For an instant, I remembered the metal moon falling, his arms around me, his heart racing against my ear. "Are you all right?" he asked. I took his hand. "Yes, because you're here." He heard me. His thumb brushed my wedding ring, but he waited. And because I'm here, I added aloud, that mattered too. We stepped beneath the birds together. I once believed survival meant escaping before the plot could reach me. I had measured freedom by exits, kept my suitcase ready, and treated every attachment as a beautifully furnished trap. Roman had believed love meant preventing loss through perfect control. He had guarded empty rooms, purchased solutions, and mistaken being needed for being known. Neither of us saved the other alone. We changed through 1,000 ordinary permissions, his open hand in the snow, my decision at the elevator, a private thought left unanswered, a truth finally spoken aloud. Love did not erase our worst instincts. It gave us someone before whom we wanted to choose better. The orchestra began a slow song. Roman held out his hand. Dance with me. You hate dancing. You like it. I like watching other people attempt it. Dominic. I placed my hand in his. Try not to threaten the rhythm. He guided me onto the floor. One hand settled at my waist. Mine rested on his shoulder. Around us, the old building glowed gold and blue. The paper birds turned overhead without falling. Roman moved with careful confidence. I stepped on his shoe twice. Natural athletic instinct, he murmured. Curtain, he smiled and drew me closer. I rested my cheek beside his and listened to the heart I had once thought I was destined to die protecting. It beat steadily, not as a symbol, not as the possession of a fictional hero, but as the living heart of the man I loved. The book had promised a perfect angel and a mafia king. It got an overworked archivist and a stubborn real estate executive with inherited enemies, trust issues, and excellent cheekbones. Honestly, our version was better. Extra story. Sunday, no emergencies. 2 years after our wedding, Roman attempted to give me a day without interruptions. The plan was ambitious. We would spend Sunday at our house in Evanston, walk beside Lake Michigan, cook dinner, and ignore every device containing email. Miles had authority over the company. Evelyn had threatened the household staff with reassignment if anyone called us about missing cufflinks. At 8 in the morning, I woke to the smell of smoke. I found Roman in the kitchen staring at a blackened waffle. He wore gray sweatpants, a white t-shirt, and an apron reading "Kiss the Cook," a gift from Noah that Roman had previously called defamatory. The appliance is defective, he said. You set it to maximum. Maximum should mean efficient. I opened the windows while he made another batch under supervision. The second waffles emerged pale but edible. We carried them to the porch with strawberries and coffee. The lake was blue steel beneath the morning sky. Wind moved through the bare branches. Roman sat with one leg touching mine under the table. No emergency calls, I said. I'm impressed. His phone vibrated inside the house. He looked toward it. I raised an eyebrow. Roman took another bite of waffle. Probably unimportant. His phone vibrated again. You can check, I said. You'll mock me. Marriage is built on sacrifice. He retrieved it. The message was from Miles. Nothing is wrong. Just testing you. You failed. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on the table. Roman blocked Miles for 2 hours. We walked along the lake after breakfast. Families passed with dogs. Runners moved along the path in bright jackets. Roman held my hand inside his coat pocket because I had forgotten gloves. Your fingers are cold, he said. A tragic condition if only I lived with a man who owned 12 pairs of gloves. 4. I have seen the closet. At the end of the pier, wind lifted my curls. Roman stood behind me, his arms around my waist, his chin against my temple. The city was a faint shape to the south. I'm happy, I thought. He kissed the side of my head. You answered a thought, I said. That was a kiss, not an answer. Legal manipulation. You married me with a 12-clause proposal. We returned home and cooked tomato soup with grilled cheese. Roman burned nothing. I dropped a spoon and blamed gravity. Music played from the living room, the same holiday melody we had once ruined together. After dinner, we lay on the sofa beneath one blanket. Roman read a development report until I removed it from his hand. No work. You were asleep. I was resting my eyes while monitoring compliance. He switched off the lamp. Firelight moved across the ceiling. I tucked my head beneath his chin and felt his fingers trace slow circles over my back. There were no villains waiting, no prophecies correcting our lives, and no grand declarations left to make. Only the dishwasher humming, rain beginning softly at the windows, and Roman's wedding ring cool against my shoulder. Once, he would not let me go because he was afraid. Now his arms loosened whenever I moved, trusting that I would settle close again. I always did, and that's the whole story. If Dominic's sarcasm and Roman's terrifyingly earnest possessiveness got you through all 13 chapters, follow the channel. More slow burn, morally gray romances like this one are on the way. See you in the next one.